everybody.
Hi.
And welcome back to another episode of Bridging the Gap. I am Jaleesa.
I'm Bridget.
And I'm Jasmine.
And together we make Bridging the Gap. On today's show, we will be discussing domestic violence and ways to escape that situation as safely as possible. We'll also have some numbers as well as resources for assistance in trying to get out of those situations. And before we deep dive into today's topic, we all had a few surprising statistics and facts surrounding domestic violence. So with that being said, I'm actually going to go ahead and open the floor to Jasmine so that she can go ahead and share what she's learned with our audience and of course us.
Something I do want to share is that domestic violence is commonly referred to as intimate partner violence, or IPV, which I did not know. I was like,
yeah, I didn't know
that either.
That's something new. But on average, 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner in the United States. And then 85% of IPV, or intimate partner violence, victims are women, which was no surprise there. But what was surprising is that a woman is beaten every 9 seconds.
Wow.
Women aged 16 through 24 are most likely to be victimized by an intimate partner. And a dating partner is sexually and or physically abusing 1 out of 5 high school students. And then for 30% of women who are abused, the first incident occurs during pregnancy, which is very sad.
That is sad.
Yeah, I knew that.
So Mom, did you want to share some of the interesting facts that you learned?
Yeah, so I was surprised, but I wasn't. But women are 5 to 8 times as likely to be victimized more than men by their intimate partner. And most intimate partner violence is not reported to the police. Only 20% of rapes and sexual assaults are reported. 25% of physical assaults are reported, and 50% of stalking incidents are reported. Despite severe underreporting of IFP cause related to intimate partner violence, it makes up about half of the violent cause that the police do get. And 1 in 5 intimate victims of domestic violence have physical injuries that require professional treatment.
Wow.
Which is really sad.
Yeah. And then I found African American women are disproportionately affected, with 43.7% of Black women experiencing domestic violence. At least that's what's reported. In the U.S., about 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men experience physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime, with nearly half of all women and men experiencing psychological aggression. Domestic violence causes over 1,500 deaths and 2 million injuries in the U.S. annually. Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Nevada are among the states with the highest rates of domestic violence victimization for women, while South Dakota, North Dakota, and New York have lower rates. I was surprised by that. And then in 2023, around 51,100 women and girls worldwide were killed by their intimate partners. And so, with that being said, all of those facts and figures that have been presented, I knew that domestic violence was an epidemic. I just did not realize how much of an epidemic it was until, we were researching for this show.
Yes. And something that you said that's really surprising is that New York is one of the lower rates,
Yeah.
which is like you hear so much about how aggressive New Yorkers are. So to hear that they're on the lower end is wow.
Yeah.
I'm shocked by that, honestly, especially with their population.
Yes. Yep. They have a massive population of people.
And then it kind of makes me wonder if it's in line with Mama was talking about, where it's not reported.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because not snitching is like a big thing in New York. And then another thing too is New Yorkers are known for minding their business. Like if it does not directly affect them, New Yorkers, like, they kind of keep their heads down. So I'm wondering if that plays a role in it too, especially with it being, underreported.
And then allegedly, I'm gonna put allegedly out there first. Corrupt police officers in New York. So
I was thinking about that. That was the first thing that came to mind when you said that maybe that's one of the reasons why it's underreported, because they're afraid to report it.
Afraid of retaliation. And that, that so it's funny when you brought up police officers. When you look at the breakdown for occupations where partners commit a lot of domestic violence, police officers are number one and firefighters are number two. And a lot of the reasons why, what Mama just said, and you too, is that people are like afraid of the police. And I've seen just last year, there were quite a few women that were killed by their partners, and they were police officers. And the only reason why it got traction is because the families were able to kind of like get it out into the news and social media and everything, and that's what got their loved ones, justice. So things that make you go, Yeah. And then I was wondering, because domestic violence is so prevalent, because I have read too, where women between the ages of 18 and 24 are more likely to experience domestic violence. Have you guys ever experienced domestic violence, and do you remember around how old you were?
So I have, and I was about 23, 24. Yeah, I would say I was in that age group. And then also, you said Nevada was one of the highest rates. I was in Nevada at the time when it happened. And I didn't see it coming. I didn't expect for them to be that type of person who would put their hands on me. But we got into a fight, and I wanted to kick them out because I was the one on the lease. I was the one paying the bills and everything. So I was like, there's no point in you being here. I want you to leave. They didn't want to leave, and then they got a little handsy, so full on tussle. But I did report. Like I called the police ASAP, got a restraining order, the whole nine.
Yeah. As for me, I've never been physically abused, but I have experienced mental abuse in a former marriage. I experienced mental abuse, and thinking about it, I was about 24, 24 turning 25, because shortly after that, I divorced him. But yeah, he was very mentally and sometimes verbally abusive. So
And then for me, I did not experience the domestic violence until I was in my early 20s because I was in college. And my partner at the time, I remember we were arguing, same thing. We were arguing, we had words, and I wanted to separate myself from the situation. So I went to go walk away because I was planning on leaving. I was in my house at the time, which is crazy.
And it is crazy.
It's crazy. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to leave because I didn't want it to escalate. And as I was walking away, I happened to have a ponytail in my hair, and he grabbed it and it like pulled me, back and pulled me to him. And I was like, I was shocked when it happened. And I was like, I cannot believe you just put your hands on me. And he was like, you act like I hit you. He was like, I didn't physically do anything. So I'm like, yeah, you did. Like you pulled my hair. And it's crazy what
it's assault.
Yeah, people don't realize, I don't know if he realized that, I think in his mind, he didn't punch me or push me or kick me. It was, him pulling my hair. Okay, well, that's not domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
And it was.
Anytime somebody puts their hands on you, without you giving them permission, it is considered assault.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to understand that. And another thing I think a lot of people don't realize, domestic violence goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Women will absolutely put their hands on men a lot of times. I feel like it takes a very strong man to hold back from striking out at a woman after she's put her hands on them. But women definitely need to understand that is domestic violence, you putting your hands on your significant other.
Mm-hmm. And I'm learning, we always talk about the good things with our siblings, and the great thing is we are extremely close to one another. We talk, they talk to mama, they talk to me. And I was quite surprised with them being younger than us, significantly younger, our baby brother. He's actually had females as young as 17, 18 who have put their hands on him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's never retaliated. He has always, mama did a really good job of instilling in him and Cedric to never put their hands on women, but there have been women that have put their hands on them. So I definitely know that it works both ways. And me saying that has made me realize that all of us, unfortunately, all of mama's kids have experienced intimate partner violence.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me just shows how prevalent it really is. And then of course you out of the four of us, you are the only one that's reported it, because I've never reported it, and obviously, they haven't. It was just, well, we just stopped talking to those people, kind of thing.
Oh no, I'm gonna call up the police quick. Please.
Yeah, I mean, you know what, and I think too that was very brave of you to do, because that showed him that you were not playing, that you meant business, and you were serious about it. So I feel like, I know sometimes it seems as though in a lot of domestic violence cases we hear about where the woman has contacted the police and, nothing happened as far as that was concerned. And then their partner came back to do something to them after the fact. But I feel like, taking that step, a lot of times women will go back to that situation because the man I was drinking, or I was high, or, something, I'll never do it again. And then they love bomb you into coming back into the situation. And you do, but when you cut them off, and report it to the police, you are showing that, no, I will not tolerate this.
Mm-hmm. And then too, I think another thing that kind of upsets me when I do hear people blaming the person that's been victimized by their partner, like, well, they should have known, or they like, it does not, relationships don't start off that way. Because if they did, 9 times out of 10 people wouldn't be together, for years. It works, and that's how it was with me and my partner. We had been together for years before anything like that had ever happened. But I would never have knowingly been with someone that I knew was physically, violent, or will be physically violent towards me.
Right.
I
feel like a lot of people wouldn't be born either. Relationships.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes,
for sure.
And I was gonna talk about, I know something else that I was gonna say too, with you, contacting the police, something else that has saved women's lives are outsiders kind of picking up what was going on. Like, for example, I just saw a story where a Domino's delivery guy had went to a house to do a delivery, and he said that when the man came to the door, he could just tell it was just something off. It was a eerie vibe, and he said it was a woman behind him, and the look that she had on her face, he said, looked like she had a black eye. And he said she kind of mouthed, help me, or at least that's what he thought he saw. And he said after he delivered the pizza, he said he kind of got like maybe 2 minutes away, and he was like, no, I need to call. So he called and reported it to 911, and they sent the police, and come to find out, the woman had actually left that man, and he had kidnapped her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and brought her back, and they literally saved her life. That Domino's delivery driver actually saved her life. And then I know that, people have called 911 pretending to order a pizza.
I was gonna say that.
Yep. And the dispatchers at first are like, you called 911. And the last one I saw, the lady was like, yes, and I want a pepperoni pizza. And she was able to pick up like, okay, this woman needs help. So I hope that more people intervene and, go with their gut. Worst thing that can happen, okay, well, we sent the police out and there's absolutely nothing wrong.
Right.
But,
Now, salute to that Domino's employee.
Yeah, he actually got a reward for that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they rewarded him for that, and I think he got to meet the lady or something. But he's literally saved her life. He just went with his gut, and feeling like something was off.
It's funny that you mentioned that about the pizza, because here where we live, they had another case like that, like you said, where the person was in trouble, the lady was in trouble, and she called 911 pretending to buy a pizza. So our sheriff, Chipwood, actually has encouraged that if you are experiencing trouble and you cannot verbally tell the 911 operator what's wrong, if you fear for your life, then order a pizza.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
So they're actually encouraging women to do that.
And I think that's genius.
It is genius. And then too, I want to go so far as to say he even went into asking for different toppings represent different things. Yeah.
That's really smart.
It's smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I was gonna say too is one thing that like really makes me happy with that Domino's employee is that he actually did do something, because we live in a day and age now where people see something,
so
say anything, or they'll just record, or they'll just go make a Facebook post about it instead of actually helping. And yeah, I wish more people were like that Domino's employee, where when they felt something was off instead of just like, oh, well, it ain't my problem. You actually did something.
And I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, and I think too, you mentioned something about making Facebook posts. With the advent of social media, there have been a number of cases where the abuser actually murdered the victim on social media, went live, or recorded. It's been several cases like that. We had a case here in the Orlando area about 3 years ago where a young lady was actually on a Zoom call working when her partner came in and murdered her while she was at work, and it was her coworkers who saw him come up behind her. I want to say they actually, he unfortunately shot her, and when she fell over, that's when they realized what was going on and they called 911. But unfortunately, by the time that they got there, she was gone, and she had a 1-year-old daughter, which unfortunately he also took the baby's life as well. And I think he went somewhere and committed suicide, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
And I was gonna, so something else that you said, and what my situation was too, is what I've come to realize, and something that I've taken away from being a victim of domestic violence, is I had more than my partner at the time. He really didn't have anything to lose. And something that I've come to realize, reading these news stories, especially if like the woman is super successful. It was a lady recently in Ohio just opened up I want to say like a hair salon or something, and she was a little older than her partner. But I'm noticing it seems like when these people have nothing to lose, and it's not just men, but I see more cases of femicide than I do where the male is killed. But I'm noticing a pattern of it. Seems like when these men have nothing to lose, that's when they like essentially crash out when it comes to their partner. And so I have made a conscious effort, going forward. When we talk about non-negotiables, I think we all touched on not being with someone that has significantly less than us, or, we want to be equally yoked with our partner, because, if things are, go awry, as far as not wanting to be together anymore, you know what, you have just as much to lose as I do, and it's not, it's not worth my freedom. Yeah.
And something I would share to that, because I do know domestic violence usually happens more with the younger adults. I think it's before we have really had a chance to really like live and like, okay, it's not really worth it. So what I would encourage a young woman is live your life, but don't rush into a relationship, because it's kind of hard when you're young to find somebody who's already kind of established and got their life going for them. So like that's your time to focus on you and get whatever it is that you're going after in place, and like start working on that. And when the time is ready and when it's right for you, the right person will come along. But that's one piece of advice I wish I could go back and tell myself, is like, don't even focus on relationships. Just
live your life.
Yeah, it is. It's mind-boggling, to say the least. And with social media being what it is I feel like it's made the world much smaller place, and the amount of news stories and videos and TikToks and posts that you come across on an everyday basis where someone has been murdered by their partner is crazy. And then it is so unfortunate to see that so many of these couples are young couples, like,
Mhm. Very
late
young.
teens,
Mhm.
early 20s. It was a
Oh, I think about that TikTok couple, the white girl with the black guy, where she murdered him.
yes, and then
They were young.
yes, and then it was in Texas. It was a guy that was 22 and his girlfriend was 21, and they got into a physical altercation in their apartment. And she went to like she was stabbing him, and he actually ended up pulling out a gun. He shot her, and they rushed her to the hospital, and she passed away. And he was mourning and grieving her so terribly that he posted on Facebook essentially a suicide note, and he went to a park and he committed suicide because he wanted to be with her, which I think is so, at 22 and 21, and I guess they had fought before, but it had never turned deadly. And so like I said, I see so many of these stories every week, and I'm like, I can't even imagine.
Something else too with that is like, I think that's why it's so important when it first happens to leave, because the longer you endure it, the more likely it is to become deadly.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse until there is no return. And, speaking of how prevalent it really is, do you all know of anybody who ever experienced domestic violence? Because me personally, actually, I take it back. I do now. Now that I think about it, I do. Okay, but have you all personally?
Yeah, I've actually witnessed it. So I do know people that have experienced domestic violence, and I've seen it, and it's scary. I've actually been in the house during the time, actually twice. I've been in the house when domestic violence has happened, and the only thing that I could think about at the time was, oh my God, what if this goes all the way left and I'm here and I'm just innocent, a witness, or they end up doing something to me, to spite them. Like, cause at that point, I'm just collateral damage. And so I actually cut off both of the friendships, unfortunately, after that, because it scared me and I didn't want any parts. I do know that both of those women did eventually get away from those partners. One divorced her partner and then the other one left. And today they are thriving and happy and everything, but it is scary to be a witness to something like that.
So unfortunately, for me, I know of two acquaintances who were in domestic violence situations. And something even closer, my ex-husband and his wife. My ex-husband actually murdered his second wife in a domestic violence incident. And it's funny, well, that's not the word I want to use. It's ironic in a way when I think about how the episode transpired between them, because she had moved out of the residence that they shared together into her own place. And he actually broke in on her, and it happened. And I often think about the time when I left him. He moved out of our residence and moved into another home. And he did the same thing to me. He actually broke in, got in through a window. And I think I was in college going to night school, and I had just got home from school, getting ready to get myself together. And heard something in the back bedroom, and I don't think you guys were at home.
No, we were at grandma's.
And I heard something in the back bedroom, which kind of got my attention. And as I started walking towards the back, he actually came out of the room, and just I had served him with divorce papers.
Wait, so okay, really quick. So what, like, was he smiling? Was he mad? Like,
No, he was upset because he had been served with divorce papers, and he wanted to confront me about the divorce papers. And so I want to say,
that's crazy.
he had been trying to get in contact with me and couldn't. And I was avoiding his phone calls. And back then we didn't have cell phones. Mm-hmm. And I was avoiding his phone calls. Yeah. And so the day that he got served, he actually...
And you were able to run out the house.
Well, I was talking to him, but I was close to the front door. And so when he started coming at me, I started going towards the front door, you know, and he was trying to talk to me, and I was able to get away from him, but you know,
get caught in the house?
No, he didn't get caught. He left on his own.
Oh, I couldn't even imagine.
But it was a very scary situation. And the crazy part about it is he actually did that to her. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, she wasn't able to get away. And, you know.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he murdered her. So I often think about that and thank God every day. You know, I feel bad what happened to her. Of course, I always will. But, you know, I thank God every day I was able to get out of it. But again, when you talk about being with somebody and not being able to imagine them doing something like that, and what makes it even more unbelievable is because of the fact that he never put his hands on me or anything like that. Now, we've gotten to arguments before, and you know, I said some things to him, he said some things to me, but it was never physical. So for him to do something like that was just unbelievable and mind-blowing to this day.
But I was gonna say, I think it goes back to something that Jaleesa connected, is when a person feels like, you know, they don't have nothing. They don't have nothing to lose. At that point in time, job compared to the job that he had when y'all were together, different.
Yeah. Well, you know, he had gone back into the military. He had gone back into the military to support them. And of course, he was on child support for you guys. And I feel like he was watching yet another family walk away from him and leave. And the stress of it all, I guess he snapped. Like, I'll never know, because I did not communicate with him after that. There was really nothing I could say. The person that I thought I knew didn't exist to me anymore. So it's just a surreal situation. But I was thinking about something else too. Another time that's really, really, they say really, really stressful, where you are prone to see domestic violence, is when the woman is pregnant. That is literally the most dangerous time for women to experience domestic violence, is when they are pregnant.
In a lot of cases, that's when it starts, from something like, because it's almost like, okay, I got you, like, I got you now, kind of thing. But something else that you said too is, and that what stands out to me, is they always say the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is when they are leaving, which is, you just said you had served divorce papers, and then she was living in her own place. So
I was trying to kick the person out.
Yup, same thing. Yup. And so they have said, you know, make a exit plan if you are in that situation, and leave as quickly and as quietly as possible. Which, again, I keep going back to TikTok, because TikTok is just it will expose you to so many things. But it was a woman that actually was, she planned her escape essentially for 4 months. And the last day that she was in her house, she did everything like she normally did, with her husband who was abusive. And as soon as he left at 8:30, by 8:45, she had some movers that had come in. They packed up a U-Haul for her. Were able to get it done in 2.5 hours. She literally only left his stuff, like the furniture and all of that, had all of that stuff packed, and she actually moved across the United States. Now, obviously, she didn't do it in one day, but by the time he got home at 4:30, she had a 6-hour head start on him, and she got going. She's like, the 4 months, it seemed like it was forever, but what she was doing was like squirreling away money, making her plan where she wanted to go. And I'm like, and it was so many women in the comments that were like, thank you for this. I needed to see this because I don't know where to start, especially if they've isolated that woman, because that's a big part of it too.
Oh, a huge part of it. They will isolate from your family and friends.
Yes, and makes it harder. Or with kids, I think that's another thing that abusers get complacent with, is like, okay, well, you got kids, you won't just up and leave me. Yeah, you can. It's gonna be a little harder, but yeah, I can. Yeah.
Something that I think about is and people talk about her, but one role she did aside from Selena that I think is really good is J-Lo in Enough, where she leaves her abuser, and she plans and plots the same way, and then towards the end of the movie, he ends up finding her, and she gotta
do
her own. I feel like that is such a good movie to watch if you are experiencing domestic abuse or violence and you need a little encouragement. Get gone. I feel like that's a good movie to watch.
And I've never been like a huge gun person. I've not, but given how things are, today, and we're talking about domestic violence. If I did not have children, like little kids, by all means, I would definitely invest in a firearm, especially if, given I've, experienced domestic violence, not wanting to do that ever again, I'm going to get something to protect, myself. And you would hate for it to have to come to that. But at the end of the day, if it comes down to my life or yours,
you hate to think about that. But and speaking of, you just made me think about something else. Another story that's currently going on in the news is a case out of Memphis where there was a pastor who was just murdered. And he was at an establishment late at night, like 1:00 in the morning. And apparently the story has now come out that allegedly that he and a woman and a man that was with this woman had some words over religion. They got into it over religion, believe it or not. And so when they left, I guess they were still arguing, and the conversation carried over into the parking lot. And so he actually attempted to strike the woman, and her partner got in between them to break it up, and the pastor pushed the guy down. Well, when he did that, she started video. He goes and gets back into his truck, and she starts videotaping. And I guess he got mad and saw her videotaping and got mad. He came back, and she actually videotaped him again, aggressively approaching her And she's steady telling him, please leave me alone, back up, I have a gun, back up, back up. He didn't back up, and unfortunately, she ended his life. So I'm more than sure she's probably going to get off on self-defense.
Yeah.
But, you know, you think about it, and for one, he's a prominent pastor, which is number one. And then number two, on the videotape, you can visibly see how angry he is, which is just mind blowing. And it's not domestic violence, but it makes you wonder, you know. So,
yeah.
I think that go into like sometimes you just never know what a person capable of.
Yeah, you just never do. And you know, and it's scary because, you know, being single, there have been times, you know, I have thought about wanting to date again and perhaps even finding somebody to walk down the aisle again. But then there are cases like this, and which makes me kind of standoffish because again, you don't know. And I've experienced that like up close and personal. Somebody that I was with for almost 12 years, you know, you think you know a person inside and out, only to find out that, you know, you really don't. So it's scary out here, and we as women definitely have to be careful. I didn't, but I was just curious, did either of you look up any red flags leading up to domestic violence?
I did not.
I didn't either.
That actually is a really good question. And I had thought about something when you were talking while Jasmine is looking that up. But what I will say is some things that dating experts say is you want to see pay attention to how your partner treats you when they're mad at you. Like even if they're mad at you, are they still loving towards you? Like, okay, I'm mad at you right now. We're mad. We had a disagreement about something. You know, will you still hug me even though you know you're mad? Or if let's say you know something is happening, like you know y'all get a flat tire or what have you, and he's frustrated or she's frustrated. They say pay attention to how they treat you when they're frustrated with something else, because it's a good indicator as to how they handle anger and their emotional maturity when it comes to that. Something else that, you know, bothers me when it comes to domestic violence is a lot of times with these, you know, femicide stories, a lot of these women are mothers and they have kids and their partners will you know, murder them and leave these kids out here. And it's really sad when it's the father of the kids and, you know, the mother, and then they leave, you know, their children with no one.
Yeah, no mother or father. Yeah, it's horrible. And it's even worse when they take the kids' lives.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen that several times as well.
Yeah.
Yes. I did find 8 warning signs of physical abuse.
Yeah.
Dual personalities. If one moment they're showering you with compliments and then the next they're being mean to you for no reason, or love bombing. Manipulation is one of them. Abusers often blame you for things when they go wrong or blame you for their own abusive behavior. Gaslighting in particular. Isolation, an early warning sign is isolating someone from their support system by limiting or cutting off contact. Wanting to share everything, while it is normal to want to share bank accounts sometimes once the relationship goes that far, but if they start restricting how you spend money or interrogating you over every single purchase or asking you for your account numbers or passwords, that is something to be alarmed by. Jealousy and control. They want to comment on how you look or how much you should eat or exercising or making jealous accusations. violence towards animals. Now,
Mhm.
it says not every physical abuser will hurt animals, but if you notice your partner doesn't think twice before screaming at the cat or kicking the dog for barking, then you might want to be a little more aware of how they act towards others.
Mhm.
Other signs to watch out for is being hypervigilant.
Mhm.
So if you notice yourself or your loved one suddenly seems extra jumpy or on the edge, that could be a sign that the relationship may turn violent or already has. Physical behavior changes. If you notice a loved one is starting to do things that weren't normal for them before, such as slouching when interacting with others or avoiding eye contact, this may be a sign that there's some emotional abuse at play.
Mhm.
And that was the last one that they had.
And those some of the things that we touched on.
It is, but you know what? I'm sitting here thinking about it's like literally everything that you named off could also be associated with a narcissistic person and narcissistic abuse. So I'm pretty sure there's a correlation between narcissism and physical abuse, and domestic violence.
And I just thought about, I remember what it was that I wanted to say too, is in the same token of, you know, with the whole being weary about dating thing, I definitely want to, if I do ever decide to date again, I definitely want to be loved the right way, but it also goes another way too. And that is, I don't want somebody to love me to death either.
Yes.
I am so that whole, if I can't have you, then no one can type. I don't want that kind of love either. Don't love me to death. You know, love me in healthy, great ways. But that's something else that you often see too is men, you know, this jealous, they'll get, you know, jealous or what have you, or they feel like, you know, you're moving on, or they don't want to see you with anybody else. So, you know, I'm kind of, yeah, I've, yeah, that's like I said, another non-negotiable.
If they like jealous of your relationship with your children or jealous,
yes, that's huge.
Yes,
that's a huge red flag.
Yeah,
but it's hard.
It is, and I wanted, it's crazy because we go on, but I wanted to offer a few resources for our listeners or anybody that does know anybody that is experiencing domestic violence and they need help getting out. Help is absolutely available. There is a National Domestic Violence Hotline. That number is 800-799-7233. If you don't have access to a phone or you don't want to make that phone call and you want to be a little bit more discreet, they actually have a way that you can text and you would text to begin to the number 88788. And then if that's not, you know, a means for you to communicate, there also is an official website as well. If you just Google National Domestic Violence Hotline, the website comes up and you can actually chat with live agents that will offer you assistance. There are 5 ways to prevent domestic violence. When it comes to helping someone get out of that situation, it says first, you believe them when they tell you that they are being physically abused. You listen to them without judgment, because that's another reason why people are so hesitant to open up, is they're afraid of what you might think or say. It says offer support and encouragement. Help them develop a safety plan. And then lastly, link them to resources that will help them leave their abusers. It's an interesting statistic too, that it does take more than 2 tries for someone to leave their abuser. And there's different reasons for that, emotional attachments, financial, things of that nature. But I believe that if people become more vigilant when it comes to this, or people are more encouraging to victims of domestic violence, I believe that together we can see those numbers come down, hopefully. And then, we are raising young women and men. And I hope for their generation to be much better when it comes to domestic violence. One thing I will say is I know that, I've never felt the need to physically harm my partners. I've never put my hands on any of my partners. And then I just feel like, for me personally, I think if someone were to ever strike me or beat me, I would never ever be able to look at that person the same way again.
Yeah.
And that's not love. I wouldn't even, that would be so it for me. So,
I often think about in this economy, and the economy is getting worse. And that's my greatest fear, is that we will see more of these type of cases, along with more child abuse. And another reason, you have women who are stay-at-home moms, and they don't have any place to turn. A lot of nonprofit agencies are being shut down. Resources are drying up. So, whereas there used to be shelters and resources to help women get away, things are becoming more and more scarce. And I just can't even imagine being in that situation and not having anywhere to turn. So, if you are a person of faith, I would just ask that, we say a special prayer for victims of domestic violence, that they are able to escape their abuser and get away. It's really sad.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah.
And something that you just made me think of is during lockdown with COVID, there was actually a huge increase in domestic violence. And it was so much so some people coined it, like who's in that field, coined it the shadow pandemic, because there were so many cases of domestic violence and child abuse cases.
Yeah,
I totally forgot.
And it was easier for people to get away with it because we were all locked down and sequestered. And so, who would know?
Right. Because kids weren't going to
school. It was a hard time. And so, again, with resources dwindling and everything, people are becoming more and more stressed out. And so we are literally entering into a perfect storm of all the right elements being put together, where we will see an increase in these type of stories, unfortunately.
And this is why community building is
so
important now than ever before.
I would encourage, people as much as they can. And too, it's a scary thing. People don't like to get involved because of the fact that they don't want to be injured or kill themselves. So they don't want to get involved. But even if you know of somebody that's being abused, you can always make an anonymous phone call. You don't have to give your name. You touched on that earlier. Just pick up the phone and call, because you never know. You could be saving somebody's life.
And and the other thing that you actually don't want to do, a tip, is if you hear somebody being physically abused, like you're in an apartment complex or a townhouse or something, and you can hear it through the walls, you never want to yell out, "I'm going to call 911," because what they found with victims of domestic violence is the abuser will actually beat them more because they can be heard screaming and yelling. And so one lady in particular that was able to get away from her abuser actually said that the neighbor threatened to call 911, and her beatings never stopped. It's just she had to be quiet during them, or else the beatings were worse. So if you are hearing something like that, just don't address it, just call, because that is the very, very best thing that you can do for somebody in that time.
Well, my ladies, was there any last bits we wanted to share?
No, I learned a lot in this show.
Yeah, this was a very heavy show, and like I said, we hope that we left you all with some tips that you can use, particularly the pizza. Thanks 911 ordering the pizza. But yeah, I didn't have anything beyond that.
And I just want to share, if there is a viewer out there who is experiencing domestic violence or abuse right now, it is not your fault. It is not it. And it's never too late to leave or walk away. Again, build community. If you don't have community, you might have to do it little by little, like Jaleesa has shared about the TikTok person who did it for 4 months before they were able to leave. But it's never going to stop, even if they apologize and say it's never going to happen again.
It's going to happen again and again.
It's going to happen again and again, and you don't want to wait until it's too late.
Right.
So I do want to share on a lighter note what our next topic will be this Thursday.
Yes.
It's going to be our fun episode, so we'll definitely be a lot more livelier. And live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. And our topic will be our top 10 favorite movies. Looking forward to that show. So please do come with your list so we can learn what your favorite movies are, so we can watch them if they're really good. If you recommended bad stuff, we ain't watched it. And if you haven't already, please be sure to hit the subscribe button, like, comment if there's something that we touched on tonight, or if you have any tips that you would like to share with any victims or potential victims out there, please do leave it in the comments down below. We would love to hear it and share with the rest of our audience. And so last but not least, our quote of the night: "We must always take sides. Being neutral helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." And that is by Elie Wiesel.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Gotta take sides.
Yeah.
But you all, we thank you so very much for joining us tonight, and we hope
Thank you.
Yay.
We appreciate you.
Have a good night. Bye.